Good morning, everyone. So it has ticked over to 10:30, so we will be starting our webinar now. Welcome to our Simplifying Client Identity Verification with BGLiD webinar. My name is Julia, and I'm an account manager here at BGL. In terms of our BGL product suite, we have Cash 360, Simple Fund 360, Simple Invest 360, and Smart Docs 360. We will be starting this session off with some housekeeping. So this webinar is recorded and all attendees will receive a link of the recording. All participants are muted. However, if you have questions throughout the session today, please put them in the Q&A, as some of my colleagues will be reviewing them throughout the session. So this is our timetable for our education week. So if you've attended some, there are 2 more on today if you would like to register for those. So today I will be covering how BGLiD can help, how to use BGLiD for fast and secure client verification throughout our product suite, as well as exploring the different BGLiD options, including biometric scanning and a BGLiD demonstration within Simple Fund 360. So how can BGLiD help? Firstly, all of you have BGLiD live in your applications. All BGLiD data is linked to the contact. No setup or training required. BGLiD is a client identity verification and PEP and sanction screening service, which has been built into our PEP and sanctions product. It is designed specifically for accounting firms and is built into your BGL applications. So CAS 360, Simple Fund 360, and Simple Invest 360. All BGL data is linked to the contact. So for example, if you have a director of a company and run a BGLiD screening on them, that screening is linked to their contact record. There is no setup or training required. It's just built into your applications and you just need to add a credit card or use the existing one on your account. Next, I'll talk a little bit about how BGLiD works in meeting the requirements that it has been built for. Firstly, BGLiD will verify the identity documents of your clients. What BGLiD actually does is verify the documents with the issuer. This is a really important part when you're going through any ID verification. You want to know what the verification source is. The Australian government is our verification source. So if someone has a passport, we're verifying that against records from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Anyone that has registered their foreign passport with the Australian government will also be able to be verified. We also have Australian driver's license verification, which verifies with all of the state road authorities, and then Medicare verification, which is verified with the Department of Health. The reason we have a number of sources is that we would want a photographic source as a first option, but you may also want a second source to verify. So all BGLiD checks also include AML screening. This includes the PEP global sanctions and watchlist screening. Every time you complete a BGLiD screening, you automatically get the AML screening. We also have an extra one called adverse media screening. So this is if you would like to check if that person has any adverse media. This is done through our integration partner, an Australian business, Frankie One. You will receive an instant result, including the report showing the whole client identity verification and which documents they use, and its expiry as well. So how does BGLiD work? There are two methods of how BGLiD works. So method one is going through the process of requesting an ID verification. This is where BGLiD would send an email out to the client requesting their ID verification, and they would then go through the workflow themselves. The second method is when you would already have the ID information, like if a client has sent you their passport or their driver's license, and you are able to enter that data and click verify to get the verification results. So to see the ID document is legit. In either method, consent is important. So you need to get the permission given, and there is a consent box as well for the customer to tick themselves. So BGLiD doesn't store the identity data in the BGL products, so we don't save the passport or the driver's license. Once the ID information is verified, positive or not, BGL products will only keep the verification result. You will be able to see the document type, such as driver's license, and the date it expires and which state. None of the particulars though. For AML, PEP, news information, you will get all of the information as it is public record. So next we'll move on to biometric scanning. So what is biometric scanning? Biometric scanning is the highest level of identity verification. So this goes through the same level one, where we use the government ID to verify that document is legitimate. Then using the image on that document, we will then ask the client to take a selfie, which then gets cross-checked to the image to verify it is a match. So this process uses AI to check 24 data points, and then we do have the three types of results that are provided. So the government ID verification, the AML screening, and the biometrics results. So from here, we will move on to a demo of BGLiD within Simple Fund 360. So as you can see here, we are in Simple Fund 360 by just going into the settings tab and then going into your contacts. So now that we're in the contacts, first we can see here what it looks like. So we have a client that has been verified. So you'll get the BGLiD verified here. A client that is currently pending, so BGLiD pending, and then a client that has failed, so BGLiD failed. So simply, if you want to complete a BGLiD screening, you would select your contact after entering them into the software. So you can just add in a contact, even if you are only wanting to do the verification check on them. So you would just fill out their details and create the person. From there, you can also request the ID at the same time. But if they are already within the software, you would just click on their name and then request ID verification. And this is where it will give you our three options. So we have our Australian Government ID. So this is $7 plus GST, and it includes your government ID database check, anti-money laundering database, and global sanctions database. We do also then have our Australian Government ID and adverse news. So the same as the first one, but this does include the adverse news database check. And lastly, the Australian Government ID and biometrics check. So this one includes your government ID database, anti-money laundering database, global sanctions database, and then the biometric face scan. So for this one, we will just go ahead with the Australian Government ID. So once you click process, you can choose one identity type or two. So if you're happy for them to just submit a passport or just their driver's license, you can select one, otherwise you can select two. So we'll send that one through. And then you can see here that it does come up as pending now, waiting for that check to be done. So now this is what your clients will receive once you have sent through that check. They will get an email from BGLiD, and then they will just need to click on it here. So we have the ID verification email, just asking for them to verify their identity. So once they click on that check, they will need to receive the code. So that does also get sent back to their email. And then they can just copy and paste it in. And then from here, because only one form of ID was selected for this particular client, they can add their ID and choose which one they would like to upload. So for this client, we will be doing driver's license. So from here, we need to select our issue country, and then it already pre-fills some of the details. You might need to change a few things because sometimes it might not go through. If you've popped through a middle name for the client, you need to make sure to move it from given names into middle name. And then here, we just need to fill out the details. So which state, the license number, and then the expiry date. Sometimes one is okay. And then from there, we can submit that one. And then it does come up with the consent form. So your client will just need to read this and then consent. So that one has gone through now, and then it does get sent back into the software. So as you can see, it is still pending here. And then once we have refreshed, it is now verified. So from there, we have got now. So the pricing, as I mentioned just before within that demo, so our Australian Government ID check is $7 per check plus GST. And then the Australian Government ID and adverse news check is $9 plus GST. And then the Australian Government ID and biometric check is $10 plus GST. So for this webinar, we do also have, if you'd like to know a little bit more about that AML CFT and CDD compliance side, we do have your guide to AML, CFT, and CCD compliance within CAS 360. So that is this afternoon at 3:30 p.m., which you can register for. I think somebody from our team has put the link into the chat for everyone if anyone would like to register.